So this is a blood report of an average Indian, and 90% of Indians don't actually know how to read the blood report and what does it actually say about you. A lot of people who come to me actually see the normal range of a blood report. So you have always been given a normal range, which is a lower limit and an upper limit, and if their blood parameters do not fall in these limits, they think something is wrong with their body. Is this the correct way to read a blood report? Of course not. Every parameter on your blood report is going to tell you something about your body, is going to give you the right message about your body, not just about that particular parameter, but about the functioning of your body and about a deeper meaning of where you need to look at, what you need to do, how you need to deal with it. And today in this video, I'm going to tell you how to decode your blood report, how to read it, and how to understand your body through the help of your blood reports. And don't be scared. It's actually easier than what you think it is. First of all, we are going to talk about CBC, which is your complete blood count. This is basically like a report card of your blood reports. It has three main components. One is RBCs, second is WBCs, and third is platelets. Let's first talk about RBCs. Now, what are RBCs? RBCs are your red blood cells. And what do? They carry oxygenated blood to all the organs of your body. Their main function is to give enough oxygen to each and every cell of your body. Now let's consider that the normal range of the RBCs is 4.6 to 6 million per microliter. But your range is around 3.4, which is less, right? Which is less than 4.6. What does this mean? This not just means that you have less RBCs, but it is saying that it is not able to carry enough oxygenation for your body. It also indicates that you have iron deficiency anemia. And what can you do for it? The main thing that you can do for it is to consume iron-rich foods. So you need to consume foods like spinach, beetroot, pomegranate, legumes, eggs. All these things will help you increase the iron content in your blood, and it will increase the oxygenation capacity of your RBCs. At the same time, it is important to know what not to eat, because when you have a lot of caffeine or when you have a lot of caffeinated beverages like even Coke, it is going to interfere the iron absorption in your body. So it is very important that you do not eat foods that prevent and avoid iron absorption in your body. That also means no chai, no caffeine, no coffee beyond 1 or 2 cups in a day. At the same time, I want you all to remember to have a lot of vitamin C rich foods, because vitamin C always enhances the absorption of iron in your body. If your iron is too low and if you have been put on supplements for iron, make sure you pair it with vitamin C. So make sure you do not consume other supplements like calcium or other multivitamins, because they're going to affect the absorption of iron supplements in your gut. So iron supplements should always be consumed at night with vitamin C and no other supplements. At the same time, for iron deficiency anemia, you also need to have foods which are super rich in vitamin B12, because they enhance the production of folic acid in our body, and at the same time it helps you correct your iron deficiency anemia sooner by increasing the production of RBCs in your body. And foods rich in B12 are again eggs, green leafy vegetable, legumes and lentils, and all these things will give you enough B12 for your body. Now let's talk about WBCs. That is your white blood cells. What are these white blood cells? They're basically soldiers of your body. They're going to protect you from infections. So if your count is above 11,000, it probably means that you're fighting an infection. And this number is going to go on increasing depending on the severity of infection. For example, you have an infection by a bacteria or a virus. Since we know after COVID there are a lot of new viral infections spreading. So whenever there's an attack on your body by a foreign pathogen like a bacteria or a virus or even a parasite, your WBCs are going to increase in their number to fight for your body, and that is what it exactly indicates. Eating foods like ginger, turmeric, garlic, or even green leafy vegetable and having a healthier diet always helps in increasing your immunity, that actually acts as a support and a help for these WBCs to fight infections or inflammations. So make sure that you're always keeping your immune system strong. At the same time, avoid eating sugary or high sugary foods because they can always worsen the infection in your body, because all these bacteria feed on sugar. So make sure you stay away from sugars. Now we'll talk about the third component of your blood, and that is platelets. Platelets are mainly responsible for the clotting of your blood. So basically, if you fall down somewhere or if you're bruised, platelets will make sure that you just don't go on bleeding until the last drop in your body. Platelets will make sure that the platelets factors come into place and they stop the bleeding right there and then. The normal platelet count in your body is around 1,50,000 to 4,50,000 per microliter of the blood. But when this count is lower, it is called as thrombocytopenia. And this is seen when you have easy bruising in the body. It is seen in a lot of infectious and inflammatory diseases. You can also see platelet counts dropping in diseases like dengue, and you really have to take care of your diet that time. So to reduce this thrombocytopenia, that is low platelet count, you need to consume foods that are rich in vitamin C. So you need to consume kiwi, you need to consume oranges, you can also consume papaya leaf supplements. All these things help you increase your platelets. Even green leafy vegetables are great to increase your platelets count. At the same time, what about when your platelet count is super high, that is above 4,50,000? In that case, it is called as thrombocytosis. Thrombocytosis is seen in tuberculosis, it is seen in hemolytic anemia where your body has lesser iron also because of it, and it is seen in many infectious diseases, it is seen in cancers, it is also seen in rheumatoid arthritis. And in these cases, you have to make sure that your diet is low in inflammation, your diet is low in sugar, you're including a lot of anti-inflammatory foods in your diet like turmeric, ginger, and you also have to make sure that you are exercising. All these things will make sure that your platelet count comes down to normal and you can maintain a healthy range of platelets. Now let's talk about the fourth component of your blood, and that is hemoglobin. There's a normal misconception that people think if your hemoglobin is higher than the normal range, it's a good thing. But that's not true. Your hemoglobin should always be maintained in the normal range. It should never be lower or it should not be too high. So the normal range of hemoglobin for men is between 13.5 to 17.5 grams per deciliter, and for women it is 12 to 15.5 grams per deciliter. If your values are lower than this, then that is an indication of anemia, especially iron deficiency anemia. At the same time, it is going to make you feel tired, fatigue, and it is also going to cause a lot of reproductive problems in women. Especially if your hemoglobin is too low and if you have planned a pregnancy or if you have planned to conceive, that is also going to affect the health and the brain health of the baby that you conceive. So whenever you plan a pregnancy, always start with iron and folic acid supplements. That will be a very beneficial thing for your baby's brain and spinal cord development. Now when we talk about higher hemoglobin ranges, that is above 17.5 in men and above 15.5 in women, it is an indicator of smoking. So people who smoke very regularly will always have higher hemoglobin. That also talks about your body's need to have more iron, but it cannot have more iron. So you need to stop smoking and get your hemoglobin down to the normal range, because abnormal increase in hemoglobin in your body is going to give you a lot of health disorders leading to dehydration. At the same time, it also causes this disorder which is called as polycythemia vera, which is abnormal blood disorder leading to more health issues. So make sure that you're maintaining your hemoglobin only in the normal range. Now let's talk about the next parameter, and that is hematocrit. Hematocrit talks about your blood volume, which is primarily made of RBCs. The normal range of hematocrit in men is 38 to 52% and in women is 35 to 48%. If your hematocrit is lower than this is a sign of, again, anemia, that your body is not able to have enough iron and oxygenation in the body. So you need to really consume green leafy vegetables, legumes, eggs as we discussed. And higher hematocrit is an indication of dehydration, whereas you need to make sure that you're hydrating your body well, you're resting well, and you are sleeping well, and you're taking care of your stress levels, because that closely contributes to the volume of hematocrit in your body. Now we'll be talking about lipid profile. Now what are lipid profile? It is basically an understanding of the fats in your body and fat storage in your body. So lipid profile comprises of your total cholesterol. It has LDLs, that is low density lipids, HDLs, that is high density lipids, and your triglycerides, that is your free flowing fat cells. And now we're going to talk about cholesterol in detail. So when you talk about cholesterol or your total cholesterol, it is ideally supposed to be less than 200 milligrams per deciliter. What if your total cholesterol is anything higher than this? Anything lower is always good. But what if your total cholesterol is higher than 200? In that case, it also indicates a lot of cardiovascular problems. Now, what are your cardiovascular problems? These are the problems related to your blood vessels, mainly your arteries and your heart. So if your total cholesterol is higher, it means that your arteries are going to have more chances and they are more prone to getting clogged, leading to a lot of cardiac and heart attack issues. And they start hardening as well. So the elasticity of your blood vessel also makes a difference when your total cholesterol is higher. How you can reduce it? Avoid eating a lot of processed foods, avoid eating sugar, avoid eating a lot of unhealthy food, and you need to focus on high fiber food like fruits and vegetables and flax seeds, nuts and seeds like this. You should also focus on good fats like avocados, ghee, olive oil, almonds and walnuts. All these things are a source of good fats. All these things will help you reduce your total cholesterol. At the same time, the most important thing to reduce cholesterol is also exercising. That contributes to reducing your cholesterol very significantly. Now, these cholesterols are also distributed into your LDLs and HDLs. When we talk about LDLs, these are your bad cholesterol. These cholesterols are actually the cholesterols that is going to clog your arteries, that is going to cause hardening of your arteries, and that is going to lead to a lot of heart issues. So your LDL significantly has to be lower when we talk about your total cholesterol. So when you read your cholesterol on a blood report, always look down and check for your LDL levels. Are your LDLs more? Or I'm coming down to now HDLs. HDLs are your high density lipids which are good for your heart, which are good for your body, because these high density lipids are actually cardioprotective. What does it mean? It actually protects your heart from heart attacks. It actually increases the elasticity of your blood vessels, and it also reduces the chances of clogging your blood vessels. What happens when your blood vessels are very hard, they're not elastic, and they have a lot of plaques? That time the blood supply cannot flow to the heart, and when the blood supply does not flow to the heart properly, your heart cannot pump properly. And if your heart doesn't pump properly, what does it do? It gives you cardiac arrest, that is heart attack, and it also gives you a lot of heart related issues, and it can also lead to stroke. So it is very, very important that your HDLs are more and your LDLs are less. What to do for that? As we discussed, other than healthy diet rich in fiber, nutrients and good fats, guys, exercise is very, very important in changing the percentage of your LDL versus HDL. If you're exercising regularly, what is going to happen? Your LDLs are going to go down and your HDLs are going to increase. I meet a lot of patients who have lower LDLs and who have lower total cholesterol, but they don't have good amount of HDLs. Even that scenario is not good, guys. You need to have high and desired amount of HDLs, that is your high density lipids, and exercising, meditations and good sleep can actually do that. So make sure you focus on this, and next time you read your cholesterol report, you need to know what to look at and where to look at. Now let's talk about one more parameter that you see in your lipid profile, and that is triglycerides. Triglycerides are the fat cells that are there immediately available in your blood that it can use for energy. Now the normal level of triglycerides is less than 150 milligrams per deciliter, but for example, if your triglycerides are 200, this is an indication that your diet is super high in bad fats, and it is also super high in extra sugars and calories. So this is a sign and indication that you need to reduce and cut down your fat intake, your oils and all type of processed and fried food you're eating. And at the same time, you also have to reduce your carbs. So you have to reduce your roti, chapati, rice, the main staple carbs that you eat, and also chocolates and biscuits. That has to go down significantly, and that will help you reduce your triglyceride levels. Now we're going to talk about something that can be very scary if not monitored properly, and that is your blood sugar levels. Your blood sugar levels can be measured in two different ways. First of all, it is checked as fasting blood sugar, and second is postprandial blood sugar level. Now, what is a fasting blood sugar level? Fasting blood sugar level is any level that is checked at least after 8 hours of eating food. That is considered as your fasting blood sugar level. The normal range for this is 79 to 99 milligrams per deciliter. For example, if your fasting blood sugar level is around 130 milligrams per deciliter, what does it indicate? It indicates that you are positive for pre-diabetes or diabetes, and it is high time that you start looking into your sugar levels and your diet, because if you don't recover from this or if you don't look into it right now, you will land into a severe form of diabetes. And many people whose fasting blood sugar levels are above 130, they feel signs and symptoms like early fatigue, dehydration, feeling thirsty all the time, and low energy level. And some people also face very big brain fog. So this is a high alert, and you always need to check and visit a doctor if your blood sugar levels are constantly high. The second type of blood sugar level is postprandial blood sugar level. The normal range for postprandial blood sugar level is 140 milligrams per deciliter. Let's see if your blood sugar level after meal, if it is 180 milligrams per deciliter, that is another high indicator of insulin resistance. Basically, what is happening here is when you eat food, there is so much sugar, there is so much glucose that your pancreas are secreting a lot of insulin to bring that sugar level down, but it is not able to do that. So your pancreas are highly stimulated, insulin is extremely high in your body, and the sugar is still not being absorbed in the body, which is basically called diabetes, and this is how diabetes starts. So this is a high alert time, guys. This is a complete red flag. This is a time when you have to stop your sugars in any form, in form of fruits, in form of chocolates, in form of biscuits, in form of rice, roti, in any form, and of course all the processed form, and start eating healthy, start eating high fiber food, start eating high protein food, start eating more vegetables and good fats like ghee, olive oil, coconut oil, nuts and seeds. All these things will help you bring your blood sugar level down, and make sure you start exercising, because exercising contributes very positively to increasing your insulin sensitivity and reducing your blood sugar spikes. So exercise, eat healthy, sleep well. Sleep is highly significant too. Don't take it for granted, and all these things will help you deal with your diabetes. Now we'll be talking about one of the most important organ of our body that is mainly needed for excretion. We consume so many foods, we consume water throughout the day. Where is the excretion of all of this happening? It is happening in your kidney. Your kidney and also your liver are the main cleansers of your body. They are going to clean your system. They are going to throw out the toxic and the waste material. And that is why your kidney health is extremely important. And there are almost 2 lakh patients adding to this list every year. This happens because of poor lifestyle choices and poor diet and poor health choices for over a long period of time. So if you're someone who feels that it's okay if my lifestyle is not good, if my weight is heavy, if I'm obese, nothing will happen, these kinds of organ issues or organ damages will reflect in the long run. And as a country in India, there are not even enough dialysis centers to help with these end-stage kidney diseases. So today we're going to talk about the main kidney parameters which indicate the health of your kidneys. The first one is creatinine, urea and uric acid. So creatinine, urea and uric acid are all 3 waste materials of your kidneys, which are basically the byproduct of protein metabolism, and they have to be thrown out of our body because excess of its level is not good for our body. So the normal range for creatinine in men is 0.7 to 1.2 milligrams per deciliter, whereas for women it is 0.5 to 1 milligram per deciliter. Any level which is higher than this indicates a lot of dehydration, poor kidney function, and at the same time it also indicates excess of protein intake. So if you're taking too many protein powders or too many protein energy bars, then your creatinine might increase, and when your creatinine is more, that leads to a lot of kidney issues and a lot of kidney damage. At the same time, if these levels are lower in your body, this indicates poor liver function, and it also indicates low protein intake. Your protein intake should never be too less or too more, because low protein intake can also cause issues in your body. So it is very important that you keep your diet rich in natural sources of protein and less artificial protein or processed protein, and that will take care of the optimal range of protein in your body. Urea and uric acid are also byproducts of your kidney, and urea level for your body has to be between 7 to 20 milligrams per deciliter. At the same time, uric acid is basically a byproduct of breakdown of purines, and purines are found in people whose diet is rich in red meat or non-veg or even seafood. Now, when your body has this excess of uric acid, and if your kidneys are not able to remove and throw out this excess uric acid, it starts accumulating and depositing in your joints, leading to a very painful joint disease which is called as gout. So your kidney function is very important for throwing away these extra waste material which can cause serious issues if they stay in your body. So if you are having any kidney function issues, if you're having any kidney damage even at a milder level, you need to consume hydrating foods like watermelon, cranberries, cucumber, celery juice is excellent for your kidney health. At the same time, you have to keep your diet in low protein or moderate protein if a kidney disease is already started. There is a lot of misconception in the market where people feel that all high protein diets or all high proteins will cause a kidney issue or a uric acid issue, but it never happens like that. If you already have an underlying kidney issues, then you have to go low protein, not if you have a healthy kidney. So make sure you have this clear understanding, because these small things can create a lot of misconceptions and myths. So make sure your diet is always on moderate protein. If you have an underlying kidney issue, make sure your diet is low in protein and consume a lot of hydrating fruits. And cranberries actually work beautifully on your kidney health. So you can also have a cranberry juice, and all these things actually help you hydrate and keep your kidneys healthy. Now we'll be talking about the significant electrolyte aspects of your kidney health. So your kidney also maintains the right amount of balance between your sodium, potassium and calcium. Your sodium is very important to keep you hydrated. If the sodium is very high in your body, it is going to cause a lot of bloating. At the same time, it is going to cause a lot of blood pressure issues. And if the sodium is low in your body, it is going to cause a lot of dehydration, fatigue, weakness and also mental confusion. So maintaining the right amount of sodium is also very important. Next, we talk about potassium. Potassium is also very crucial, and if the potassium is not enough, if it is in a very low amount, it is going to cause a lot of muscle weakness and a lot of tiredness in the body. So make sure you include bananas, sweet potatoes and even coconut water to maintain the right level of potassium. The next important component is calcium. Calcium will make sure that your bones are strong. If you're not having enough calcium, the bones can actually go brittle. And when you're having calcium, you also have to make sure you're consuming the right amount of vitamin D, because vitamin D is very much needed for the right absorption of calcium. And this will make sure your bone density is good and you don't lead and fall into these diseases called as osteoporosis and brittle bones. Now we'll be talking about the liver enzymes. Your liver enzymes are also very crucial in demarking your liver health, that is your ALT, AST and ALP. At the same time, your liver parameters will also indicate the amount of bilirubin and albumin in your bloodstream. Now all these liver enzymes are going to mark and they are an indicator of the liver health. So if these enzymes are not in their normal range, that is a sign of either fatty liver or a poor liver function. If your liver is not functioning properly, it disturbs the entire metabolism in your body, leading to a lot of inflammatory issues which lead to cancers, a lot of autoimmune issues like rheumatoid arthritis. So it is very important that your liver function happens properly. If you notice any early signs of liver damage or fatty liver, it is important that you correct it at the right stage by consuming the right food. Now when we talk about bilirubin and albumin, bilirubin is a byproduct of your red blood cells breakdown. And if the level of bilirubin is too high in your body, it indicates into a condition called as jaundice, which we all know is seen by yellowish discoloration of your skin, of your eyes. And this can actually indicate to a bile duct blockage or a liver damage. At the same time, if the amount of albumin is too low in your body, it is also a sign of malnutrition, another type of liver damage, and it has to be looked into quite seriously because you also have to take dietary changes to increase the albumin in your body. Now, to improve liver health, it is very important to also do intermittent fasting because that gives liver enough time to recover itself and to realign and heal itself. At the same time, including foods like garlic, turmeric, all these anti-inflammatory and antioxidant foods will help you improve your liver health. At the same time, if you have been consuming alcohol for a very long time, that is going to cause a lot of damage to your liver. So make sure you stop eating processed food and also stop drinking alcohol. That will also contribute to healing your liver. Now we'll be talking about your thyroid function test, that is your TSH, T3 and T4. So there are basically two things happen here. One is when your TSH is too high and second is when your TSH is too low. When your TSH is high, that is also called as hypothyroidism, which means that your body has less thyroid and it needs more. So your brain keeps stimulating the thyroid organ to secrete more TSH so that after more TSH the body can have more T3 or T4, but that never happens, and that is why it leads to hypothyroidism. And in hypothyroidism you will see symptoms like weight gain, you will see symptoms like sluggishness, you will feel colder very soon, you will put on more weight. All these things are seen in hypothyroid, and in this condition make sure you're consuming iodine rich foods and also you're eating healthy and you're exercising, and this will contribute to recovering from hypothyroid. Second situation is when you have low TSH. When you have low TSH, that means you have hyperthyroid. When you have hyperthyroid, that means there's too much of thyroid hormone in your body, that is your T3 and T4, and your body wants to reduce it. That is why it keeps giving a signal to your thyroid organ, your thyroid gland, to reduce its secretion of TSH. So your TSH is low but T3, T4 are more. And in hyperthyroid, you will feel a lot of sweating, you will feel rapid heartbeats, you will lose a lot of weight, exact opposite symptoms of hypothyroid. And in this case, you actually have to limit eating iodine rich foods. If you are eating, you have to reduce intake of salt, and also you have to stop eating iodine rich fruits and vegetables and seafood also, and that will start taking care of your hypothyroid. If your levels are too much above the range or below the range, it is very important to consult a doctor and start the right medications for these conditions, because medications are very important in this thing. So never take it for granted, never always think that I will do it naturally. Always visit a doctor, start the right medication, and then work on your diet, lifestyle, and then you can always recover from it and reverse it naturally. But the right approach towards treatment is very important. So guys, in this video we saw how to actually read your blood report, how to analyze it, how to understand it, and how to decode it. But that doesn't mean you start becoming your own doctors and do not go to an expert or a specialist, because you have to visit a doctor to understand the intensity of any particular disease or any particular issue and link it to other parameters. And if it is extreme enough and the doctor suggests certain medications, you have to be on it, you have to be on the right lifestyle, right diet, and right holistic approach, which only a doctor and a specialist can tell you. That is very important. So do not just analyze something, come to a conclusion, put it on Google. Go to a doctor. There's a reason why they spend more than 6 to 10 years in studying what this is and in giving you the right diagnosis and treatment. So go visit a doctor, take the right help, take the right nutrition, do the right lifestyle modifications, and all of these things will help you achieve a great health and fitness.